single cell in our body, okay? But then, I never really thought about it, but then how does that get back, right? And your lymphatic system is key to that. Your lymphatic system is what kind of uptakes that interstitial fluid and brings it back into the circulatory system. But what's interesting is your lymphatic system really doesn't have a pump. There's a little bit of peristalsis in the lymphatic vessels, but not a whole lot. A lot of it primarily happens through movement. When we move, it causes muscle contractions, and those muscle contractions push on the lymphatic vessels and helps it to get back up to where it needs to be. And where it needs to be, this seriously, is so cool. The human body is just amazing. So it needs to come back up towards your thoracic duct, which is in your subclavicle vein, okay? The reason why is your heart pushes out, and up here is where your circulatory system has the least amount of blood pressure, which is perfect for dumping fluid back into it. Because if there was a lot of pressure, you wouldn't be able to get it back into the system, right? There'd be too much pressure there. And so this is where our lymphatic system has to get this lymph fluid. It's all the way back up in here, so it can enter back into your blood, your circulatory system, right above the heart. All right? It's kind of a big trip, right? We kind of need a lot of pressure to get it there because, again, it has to work against gravity. Now, which we shouldn't be surprised, because this is the way the human body also works, right? The lymphatic system function decreases with age. What a surprise, right? And there's negative impacts with age as it relates to the branching of your vessels. I think if you have less branching, right, then there's less that can be picking up, right? There's just less out there. And then there's also a decrease in the pumping ability of the lymph vessels. So I talked about how there's some peristalsis. Peristalsis is just like minor little contractions that help kind of push things along. Think of your esophagus. Your esophagus has that peristalsis. That's why if you wanted to, you could try eating upside down, right? Wouldn't recommend it though. So we were thinking, okay, what could we do to kind of impact this system, right? And what we thought of were two different aspects. What if we could create something that had some sort of massage aspect to it? And then we also looked at some sort of microcurrent. If we were interested in these two aspects and how they might work together, you have an impact. So first, the microcurrent. So the microcurrent that we developed, this is the basic outline for it. So it's a pulsing waveform. This pulsing waveform has already been known to stimulate the skin, but it pulses up 10 times, it pulses negative 10 times, positive 10 times, and it moves back and forth. So this was the waveform that we looked at. But then we also thought, but everybody's different, right? And so how strong should this waveform be? I mean, can we pick just a number or a strength to it? So what we decided is that we wanted it to be comfortable. So we came up with this continuous comfort control mechanism. So here's how it works. So the current or the system that we were looking at was going to kind of pick up on the conductivity of the skin. And what's interesting is if you go from one area to another area, the conductivity of the skin can differ. It can differ because of maybe exposure to elements, right, causing some to be more dry than others. It can change in thickness of the skin. All of this is related to the resistance of the conductivity. So what's interesting is when you move from something that has high conductivity, which means you need a lower current, to something that has low conductivity, so you need a higher current, you can get this jump. And that jump can be felt, and sometimes it can even appear or sense be a little bit painful. So what we decided is we wanted this current to be able to make, instead of jumping from low to high, that it would slowly ramp up to help make it more comfortable, because we assume that if it's more comfortable, the more likely people are to use it, right? I mean, how many of you guys like to stick your finger on a hot stove just to see if you can feel it, right? Don't do it, right? Okay, so our theory was that we would have two different mechanisms of action. One would be this massaging, which could kind of push the interstitial fluid, and the other would be the microcurrent, okay? So but whenever you have a microcurrent, you need a conductive medium. So we looked at different conductive mediums as we go out through this presentation. So one of the conductive mediums that we looked at was just a very plain inert gel. And the benefit of this is that it isolates the microcurrent. There's really nothing else in this gel. Obviously it's going to be hydrating because it has to have water in it, right? That's what's going to help conduct it. But that's really it. So this really helps to like isolate the benefits of the current by itself. But then we were also interested in the fact that, well, if we're going to have a formula, right, a conductive medium, can we put something in the conductive medium that will have benefits at the same time? And so we looked at different ingredients that might have different mechanisms of action or different purposes within the formula. So let's talk about some of those first. So when we go through the slides, there's either inert gel, topical 1, or topical 2. Topical 1 and topical 2 differ in their format, and then topical 1 has the green tea safflower extract, whereas topical 2 does not have that key ingredient, okay? Okay, so we picked the ingredient Cryptum meritum extract because research had shown that it can increase the production of beta endorphin in human keratinocytes. Endorphins are those feel-good chemicals you get, right? Yeah, I was actually in a spin class this morning, and she was talking about how she was going to push us really hard, and it was going to hurt in the moment, but it was going to feel so good afterwards. And she was absolutely right, okay? Because those endorphins start to go. But anyways, this ingredient has the ability to increase those beta endorphins from the keratinocytes. Another ingredient we looked at was to support lymph. This lotus corniculatus flower extract can stimulate a thing called adiponectin. And adiponectin is a chemical in our body that can promote blood vessel formation per this citation here. And so what you see is that with oxidative stress versus without oxidative stress, when you put the lotus corniculatus extract on, you get better adiponectin, and adiponectin can then help with blood vessel formation. And we talked about how that's important because as we get older, that begins to decrease that branching. Next, the green tea safflower combination. Now this was specifically included because it helps to impact adipocytes. Adipocytes are fat cells, right? Everyone loves fat cells. In this study, or in this assay, this in vitro analysis, what we found is that this blend of green tea with the safflower can actually increase lipolysis. And lipolysis is the breakdown of fat, or the adipocytes. Woohoo! Right? And then in another assay, we found that it also targets the lipolytic gene expression of adipocytes, which again is the breakdown of fat. So again, just reconfirming the benefits of this green tea and safflower extract. So based on all this, these were the hypotheses that we were kind of set out to investigate. That microcurrent plus massage would have a benefit on penetration, the movement of fluids, whether that be microcirculation and endpoints related to the lymphatic system. By the way, the lymphatic system is a little bit difficult to evaluate. So we had to kind of look at endpoints as opposed to actually being oh yeah, that lymph vessel is doing this, okay? Cellular energy, and then skin thickness integrity, because all of this, if you kind of put them together, or even individually, we thought would have overall influences on wellness, which again is our end target. So first, when we're talking about skin penetration, so we did an evaluation where we looked at different types of microcurrents, okay? So hypothetically speaking, we're looking at a direct current, okay? So a direct current is either positive or negative, and it stays just constant. All right, there's no changing from the positive axis to the negative axis. We looked at a microcurrent that pulsed 10 times positive and then 10 times negative, and then one that had a slightly different variation to those pulses. And what we found is that all of the microcurrents, when you compared it to control, had a better deposition of a key marker ingredient. We usually use allantoin because it's commonly used in topical products. So a better deposition of allantoin through in the epidermis compared to the control. And the control was just where you put the product on, okay? And that was through, all of a sudden I lost it. It was through a one mechanism. So this was actually done in vitro. So it was an assay, like a Franz cell, okay? Here, though, we did something which would be considered to be in vivo. So this is on human skin. So what we did now is, because we've established that microcurrent has this benefit, but we're looking at microcurrent plus massage, right? And so we wanted to kind of dig into this a little bit more, okay? This is for Casey Geeks out, by the way, sorry. So what we did is we brought these individuals in, and we put product on them on one spot, okay? They were actually, it was interesting, they're sitting in a chair, okay? So, and they were randomized. So in one area, we put just product, so let's say on the arm, okay? And then on the other area, we put product and we just massaged it in with like a little massager. We just massaged it in for 5 minutes. And then on another area, like their leg, we put the product and then we massaged it in with microcurrent for 5 minutes. And then in the last area, we just took skin. It was just plain, like no untreated, right? And we did tape stripping. So tape stripping means that you basically put tape on the skin and then you rip it off. And then you analyze what comes off the skin. And we do like 10 tape strips deep. Well, actually 11, because the first one you put on and you take it off, and then you put one on, and then you rip it off, and then you save that, and you put it in a canister, and then it gets sent out, and it gets evaluated, okay? And we looked at the odd number of tape strips versus the even number, and if something had messed up with the odds, then we'd go to the evens just as a backup, okay? Probably more information than you needed, but like I said, I'm geeking out. So what was cool is the control. So the area where no product was applied, right? Interestingly enough, we really didn't find any allantoin. It just because it wasn't there. Or there were negligible amounts, okay? The orange is the gel by itself. And what you find is that when you put product on, guess what? A little bit gets in there. We do pretty good, right? And you can see the tape strips are right here, like how deep it is for each tape strip. And then when you massage it in, right, without the microcurrent, you get better penetration. So massaging in your product has a benefit, okay? So if you want to spend 5 minutes massaging product in, go for it. But when you turn the technology on and you have the microcurrent plus the massage, you get even deeper penetration into the epidermis, okay? So, if someone asks you, but can't you just massage it in? What is the answer? You can, but if you want better results, what would you use? A microcurrent. Very good, test at the end. All right, the research also had told us that part of the benefit of having a pulsing current, okay, is that a pulsing current can actually cause physical vibration in the body, okay, within the skin. And that physical vibration is well known to release, or physical vibration is known to release a nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a chemical found in our bloodstream, and it causes vasodilation, which means the blood vessels get bigger, and when the blood vessels get bigger, you can have more flow, right? There's a greater movement of fluid. So what we did is we looked at, again, the waveform and we said, okay, if we put the waveform on some skin and we look at the gene expression that happens there, what peaks? What are we upregulating and downregulating, right? And again, what we found is that it targeted genes in the nitric oxide pathway to increase vasodilation, and therefore has, again, the potential to drive microcirculation. So we were looking at our waveform, or the waveform of interest to us, specifically to see if it had these same types of end benefits, and it did. Okay, this is also really cool. So this is optical coherence tomography and an angiograph. So what, again, we did is we looked at applying an inert gel. We applied an inert gel with massage, again, for 5 minutes, and we applied an inert gel and we just massaged for 5 minutes. And again, we found the same type of benefit, okay? The brighter the vessels are, the more stimulation or the more movement you're having there, right? And you can see that you get, you guys are all pumping blood right now, right? I would hope so. So you get a little bit, but when you massage it, you get a little bit more. And when you add, again, the microcurrent, you get even more. So this, again, is another way. And this was just a little pilot study we used using this technology to look at it. And this is after a single use. Then another in vivo evaluation we did. So circulation's cool, right? We want that. But microcirculation, right, can lead to nourishment, because that's really what we want. Like, we want to look better. So this evaluation, or using this technology, used SpectraCam. So it was a special camera that can take pictures of the skin and look at the changes in hemoglobin, or oxygenated hemoglobin, and deoxygenated hemoglobin, okay? And what you want, and we took pictures before use and after use. And again, this is using topical number 2 for 5 minutes on the thigh, okay? And what we found is after you use the system compared to before, there was a decrease in overall hemoglobin. Now you might be thinking, but is that a good thing? And the answer is yes, because that means that the hemoglobin was deposited, or the oxygen was deposited out of the hemoglobin and into the cells, okay? And so you get this decrease in hemoglobin because you have decreased the oxygenated hemoglobin, because there was a greater exchange to the cells, which means your deoxygenated hemoglobin happened, okay? So what we're saying is that the circulation is happening, and the circulation is happening to the skin, and it's depositing the nutrients to the skin, which is what we want to happen. And it was further validated because in the same study, we found after that 5 minutes that there was increase in hydration, which could be directly related to brightness. All right? So again, we're getting this impact throughout the body. The other aspect that we wanted to look at is, again, lymphatics, because that was circulation, right? So that's kind of getting it out there. So circulation, and we had talked to an advisory board member, Dr. Zoe Dralos, about lymphatics. And she was telling us, and this is a great quote, but in case we weren't sure, because if you've ever been in a really long plane ride, like you lived this, no one had to tell you this, right? Is that when we're not active, right, that fluid can accumulate in our extremities. And it can't re-enter circulation very easily, and unless the lymphatic channels pick it up, right? So a decrease in thigh or arm circumference would illustrate a depuffing or a movement of interstitial fluid, okay? So the use of a technology with an inert gel illustrated a statistically significant reduction in arm and thigh circumference after 2 weeks, okay? So we're not talking about a decrease in fat, but we're just talking about there was a decrease in fluid in those areas, that it got pushed or pumped back to where we needed it to go. I see some people moving their ankles now. I totally get you. And here in a different study, We had individuals who were kind of prone to that swelling in their calves due to the type of work they did or just physiology. And they had them use the microcurrent massage technology with a topical number 1, on their calves, okay, for 4 weeks. So they would use it, they used it 4 or 5 times a week, okay? And what we found is that 91% of the subjects had a decrease in their calf swelling. 91% of the subjects in the study. The mean decrease was 5.5%, and by week 4, 82% of the subjects had that. But the mean decrease was 7.4%. So this is working consistently and having the ability to help, again, decrease that interstitial fluid that tends to accumulate in our extremities. Here's another cool aspect. Well, I don't know if it's cool. I take it back. Here's another uncool aspect, okay? Is that the lymphatic system is actually linked to cellulite, and cellulite is linked to the lymphatic system. So there's this research, these Godoy individuals, they do lots of research on like cellulite and lymphatics. And in their research, they have found that there's a relationship between lymphostasis, which lymphostasis is like the stagnation of lymph, so that accumulation in the extremities, and cellulite and the circumference of the extremities. And so when lymphatic movement is improved, there's also a reduction in circumference and a reduction in the appearance of cellulite, okay, which can be meaningful. So in a study that we did, we looked at clinical grading for the improvement of the appearance of cellulite after 8 weeks using, again, the massage microcurrent plus topical number 1. And we found that a 28% reduction in the number of depressions. So again, that orange peel type look, right? 28% reduction in the number of depressions at 8 weeks, and a 30% change in the depth of depressions, so they didn't look as deep. And that again was found in 76 and 67% of the subjects. So again, a high impact there. The subjects also perceived the benefits because, let's be honest, the clinical grader is trained to look at it, right? And a lot of us don't care what the clinical grader looks at. They will care what they're going to see in the mirror, or what their loved ones are going to see, or what their beloved is going to see in them, right? And so they also were able to see some of these changes in their appearance of their skin. Another aspect that microcurrent has been shown to have is it's been shown to increase ATP in the cells. And we again looked at the technology, we looked at the microcurrent in vitro, and we too found that there were changes in gene expression consistent with mitochondrial biogenesis. So what this means, so ATP and mitochondria, okay, these are basically like the power systems of your cells, right? Have you ever had a flashlight that when you turned it on, it was super, super dim, right? And you're camping, you have to go to the bathroom, and so you're hoping not to fall, right? But if you had, so it has low, that for all intents and purposes, we could say that flashlight has low battery, or in this analogy, it has low ATP, right? But then if we have another fresh batteries in our flashlight and it's super bright and we can just see everything, right? That'd be like having high ATP. Our bodies, our cells are able to function optimally because we have the energy to do that. So that ATP basically powers everything, right? So we also looked at the collagen changes using microcurrent and massage in the skin. And this is in the arm. This is using a technology called a vivascope. And a vivascope has the ability to take cross-sectional pictures at different depths within the skin. There's so much cool technology right here. And so we were interested in deeper down where we could actually look at changes in the dermis, in the collagen, right? And what we found is that after 1 week of use, there's a 4% increase in collagen, and by week 4, there's a 13.6% increase in collagen. And it has to do with how organized the collagen fibers are. And I just picked this up here not because I really expect very many of you to understand it, but it just kind of looks cool. But these are the types of images that are taken and then evaluated, and you can see the arrows tell us kind of those spaces that they're looking at, where they can see the definitive changes in the look of the collagen within the skin. We also can find that there's changes in skin density, okay? And again, this is the density of the dermis. Your dermis, it could have a little bit of fluid in it, right? But if your dermis is dense, is thicker, right, is fuller, then it can have that healthier, more youthful look and appearance to it. So we also found, whether or not this is because, again, of the increase of collagen or lack of fluid, but we find that there's a greater density. And you can see this, the black is more that extra space, the green is more like the structure within the dermis, and you can see that there's greater structure there as you go out the 28 days. We also did another study looking at dermal ultrasound, which would be related to all this, right? And we found that 100% of the subjects had an increase in their dermal ultrasounds, whether that be because of collagen or what have you, right? And it's a 14% change from baseline. So then, and this kind of is the crux of it, if you ask me. So we're having all these different mechanisms of action, right? But what we find is that when you give individuals a system that provides microcurrent massage, and we ask them to use it, even after a single use, individuals can feel the impact of this. 91% said that the product system helped them feel, support their overall health and well-being. That they felt more energized after using the product system. That it alleviated pain without after workout and increased mobility and helps to reduce muscle tension. So you can see that these are like the end, like what I'm feeling from it benefits. So if I take all this unique technology is intended to return balance into your body, right? Through these different mechanisms of action. And that was really what we were most interested in. Thank you.